On behalf of Chairperson Uma Chigurupati and her committee, I, Honorary Secretary Radhika Agarwal, extends a warm welcome to our esteemed guest, Dr. Shashikala Kola, respected past chairs, and my flow friends. Wishing you all a very happy Mother's Day. Grace, beauty, strength, never-ending love. A mother is definitely the perfect amalgamation of all this. But she is also a nurse when you get sick, a chef for your cravings, a therapist when you need it, and so much more. In short, she is a superhero. In fact, we are all superheroes. Especially amidst the storm of the pandemic, every mother, every woman has shown resilience and willpower and so brilliantly blended work and home, personal and professional, family and future. We should celebrate how far we have come and how much we have overcome. However, we women are often the most deeply affected during a health crisis because we ignore our health symptoms and give family the priority. Our discussion today will help give us guidance on how to navigate the current situation and take care of ourselves as a woman first, and then take care of our families as a mother. Let us start this afternoon by salutation to our national flag. Now, I would like to invite our chairperson, Uma Chigurupati, to give her welcome address.
Good evening, everybody. I would like to welcome our guest speaker, Dr. Shashikala Kola, past chairs, and the Flow Fraternity to our session, Women in COVID Times. We have started this term in the middle of a storm and started steering through this with the help of our enthusiastic committee and cooperation of all our members. I'm hopeful that we overcome this challenge and come out victorious soon. Like to recap last 23 days and the work we have done from our chapter. People must be wondering what are these 23 days? The change of guard happened exactly 23 days back. Staying fit and healthy is a must, especially in these pandemic times. Health and fitness being our main initiative of the year, we organized our first 5K walk, Feet on Fire, on 17th of April. A pledge was taken by all the members to make fitness a part of their daily regime. We started a trend of responsible and collective fitness drive at Flow Hyderabad with the caption, "Stay healthy and fit in a responsible way." We hosted our first event, Vande Mataram, on the 30th of April, celebrating 75 years of India's independence. In this regard, we honored the exceptional heroism of our armed forces, and we would continue this spirit of celebration throughout the year. It was an honor to have had the Vice President of India, Sri M. Venkaiah Naidu Garu, as the chief guest, and Mrs. Ujjwala Singhania, President FICCI Flow, as the guest of honor. We also had guest speakers from 3 armed forces, Air Force, Navy, and Army. Although it was a virtual event, it was very enlightening and filled us with patriotic spirit. We all know that we are going through turbulent times. To ensure help to the best of our capacity during this pandemic, Flow Hyderabad launched a COVID care cell on 2nd May. The cell is providing help to the members and their families with emotional, psychological counseling, consultation by experienced doctors, and verified information on the availability of resources needed to fight against COVID-19. Our members are working tirelessly and giving a helping hand to those who are in need. After a discussion with Ms. Harichandana, Collector Narayanpet, Flow supported with PPE kits, masks, and other required material to help the COVID affected areas of the district. 14 cartons containing medical supplies like PPE suits, N95 masks, and immunity kits were sent to the district headquarters. Also, a second consignment consists of 30 cartons of biscuits, provisions, and sanitizer dispensers are ready to send to the same place. Flow Hyderabad members have wholeheartedly contributed to the noble cause and are determined to continue doing the same in near future also. We have conducted 3 rounds of interviews, and I'm glad to announce that 61 new members have joined this year so far. We are going to have an orientation soon for these members. Our empowering team started working on incubation initiatives also. Even during these testing times, my dynamic committee is working very hard. Happy to see the impeccable planning and execution of events and initiatives, and these works are beautifully portrayed through our social media handles. Coming to today's program, on the eve of Mother's Day, I would like to wish a happy Mother's Day to all those beautiful women. I would like to say that I'm grateful to be a woman and a mother. I remember the quote that women's health need to be front and center. We women tend to ignore our health while multitasking and juggling between family and work. It is high time that we start investing time and energy in our health and health of rest of the family. We have with us Dr. Seshikala Kola, who's going to address the health issues with focus on the COVID times, which will help us to sail little more confidently through this tough period. Dr. Shashikala Kola, MD DGO, is a consultant gynecologist and obstetrician. She is trained in robotic surgery at Atlanta. She has held various positions as secretary and vice president in the Obstetric and Gynecological Society of Hyderabad. Also, she was the president of Society of Perinatology and Reproductive Biology, Hyderabad chapter. She specializes in endoscopic surgery and high risk obstetrics. On a personal note, she's a true multitasker. Besides her busy schedule and taking care of a joint family of 4 generations, she actively participates in a lot of literary activities, especially in Telugu. A music lover and learning Carnatic music along with her granddaughter. Dr. Seshikala, thank you for being with us here today. The floor is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Uma, for that lovely introduction. So I'm very happy to be here amongst you all. Thank you, Uma, for this invitation. And I don't know, today I was asked to speak on women in COVID times. So I thought I will speak little differently because what all of us physicians, we tend to talk a lot about medicine and, and overburden you with, and I'm sure most of you know the medical part of it. Only thing is I want you to understand the nuances of why we are advising you what at what time, and also to plan and change your lifestyles if it can be helped. And most of what I'm going to talk may sound little weird, or maybe very little, some of you may get scandalized, but I want to be very frank with you all and talk about what I feel, what is closest to my heart. And quite a few of you may be aware of what I'm speaking, but for others, it may be an eye opener. So before I start about COVID and other things, which all of you are being bombarded day in and day out, I will speak a little bit about our role of women, because women are responsible for the physical and emotional well-being of the family. So in order to take care of the family, the woman has to herself be very aware, and then she must also be healthy. Now, so this is, I felt it's the time to rewind before we go into what we are supposed to do. Better to go back to the past, rewind and reflect, because the past holds the key. Past holds the key. And with that, with this rewinding, we will rediscover our harmony, rhythm, and write a new song and move forward. So we'll start from the beginning, start from the very beginning. So that is our human body. Let us understand what we are as a human being. Ours is a very unique ecosystem, because we think that, our body belongs to us, but it does not. Our body may contain our own cells, maybe 10 trillion or one, depends on each person's genomic makeup. But in our body, we host something like 50 to 100 trillion bacteria, viruses, and fungi. So that means 5 to 10 times more our own cell population. We have got these bacteria, viruses, and fungi. And these are all living with us in harmony. And not only living in harmony, they are also aiding us in many of our metabolic processes. So we think, if we are digesting food, or if we are feeling happy, we are feeling energetic, or we are feeling depressed, we think it is our mind which is doing it. But it is not just our mind. It is the waste material which are being produced by these various bacteria. Most of them are in our gut, in our intestinal system. So, and quite a number is on the skin and even our genital tract. Wherever there is an opening in the body, that is where a lot of bacteria are there, because and lot of immunogenicity is also there, because these bacteria can become suddenly harmful, and through that they can enter into our system. So it is like the gateway. All the openings are like the gates of a big city. So wherever the gates are there, always there are a lot of soldiers guarding it. So our immune system will be guarding all these openings. So these bacteria, these bacteria could be commensals. That means they are there, but they don't do any work. They are just living there. Or they can be mutualistic benefits. That means symbiotic relationship. The bacteria is producing something which is good for us, and our body is giving the bacteria something which is good for them. The third group is the pathogenic. That means suddenly they start attacking us. So this is, some of them are all the time attacking, but they are not in our body. They come in, attack, and then once the body fights it, they disappear. Like now, COVID virus is one of them. And of course, we also know that there are a group of organisms called fungi. That means the fungus. And if you remember, the penicillin antibiotic was produced from a fungus. So always the bacteria and fungi were always fighting with each other for dominance in our body. And that's how Alexander Fleming found out about the penicillin. And then that antibiotic, when it was given, it was killing bacteria. So it is not only killing bad bacteria, it was decimating the good bacteria. That we have realized over the years. Now from penicillin, we have got so many other antibiotics, more are broad spectrum antibiotics. So they not only kill a small group of bacteria, they kill even the good bacteria in the body. So what about our this genome? That means the microbiome, the bacteria and all that. How do we get them? So we get our body cells from our parents. We inherit them from the parents. We also inherit the microbiome. Microbiome exposure happens when the woman delivers vaginally. The baby is passing through the vaginal canal during childbirth. The bacteria will start colonizing. And these bacteria, the mother also has the bacteria of the husband, because they have been cohabiting for so many years or months. So that's how both the parental microbiomes enter into the system. So there are also some studies which have shown even before delivery, even not in labor, in utero also, some of these bacteria can go and colonize the gut of the in utero fetus. These are new studies. We still don't know many things. We don't know. We think it is not happening, but it is happening, and we are finding out new and new things every day. And also this gut bacteria, once the mother starts breastfeeding, and the type of foods we give the children, infants. See, nowadays we are seeing so many mothers, they get one Daya to help. The moment they are delivering, the mothers say we cannot handle the small child. So they get someone from outside. So that person, if they are handling, and if their bacteria which they colonize is not very good, you are inoculating your baby with that bacteria, and the baby is going to grow with those bacteria. Whereas olden days, it was a person within the family, even if that help was also with the family for many number of years. So you see, the whole microbiome is compatible. They don't have any clash with each other. So now with this background, now we have to rethink. So how should we go about and find the answers for some problems which we have? So for being healthy, that means we need to have a balanced, not only balanced, a diverse microbiome. If you see the microbiome in a American person, a person living in the United States of America, they contain maybe 400 to 500 species of bacteria in their gut. Whereas they have studied a group in Tanzania, where those people are living now also like the hunter-gatherers. In their bowel, they found almost 4,000 species of bacteria. So that means the more diverse it is, the more benefit you get. It is like a small village. In a village, you have a potter, you have a metal person, you have someone doing the masonry work, and someone who's stitching, cobbler, all these things. So if you have everyone, they are interdependent, and they make that village self-sufficient. Whereas if you have half people are not there, you have to outsource them. You have to get them from outside. So all these things, you have to think in those lines. And a strong immune system. This strong immune system again depends on the diversity of your microbiome and what it is producing and how your body is reacting to it. And the third thing you need is a balanced hormonal milieu. So in this next few slides, I will just talk about the microbiomes, our immune system, how our hormones are dependent on the sunlight and many things. Then I'll go on to the COVID, and then little bit about COVID in pregnancy and immunization. So there is a homeostasis which is lost. That means if these symbionts are those which help our body, commensals are neutral bodies. But if the pathogens gain upper hand, then the symbionts become less and the person gets disease. So if you see the evolution of human diet, as I told, that Tanzanian group of tribals who are still hunting and gathering, they eat what, the husband, the male in the house goes out for hunting, and the lady goes out and picks up the tubers from under the earth, and she cooks them, and some berries which are available, that's all. If they don't store food at all, every day they go out, find whatever food is there, they will cook and eat. If they don't find food, that day they starve. If once in 15 days or 10 days they could find one hunt, they can get one animal, then they cook and finish 1500 calories, 15,000 calories, they complete it. But other days they are fasting. So it is like that they are living. But those people have a lot of bacteria, and they have a lot of very good immune system. They are not obese, they don't have diabetes, they don't have autoimmune diseases, so they don't have hypertension. So all these, they live happily with nature. Then that was happening from 200,000 years, 10,000 years ago, then we started doing agriculture. After that, we started producing grains, and then we were not going out for hunting. So all our microbiomes also has started coming down. But in the last 50 to 100 years, imagine what changes have happened in our diet. We are using more and more processed food, sanitized diet. All this is really playing havoc to our system and the microbiome. So the Western diet has derailed our evolution. So could there be an incompatibility between our human genome and our microbiome? That means our microbiome, suddenly what all we had, we have lost within a few hundred, in 100 years. So we don't have enough of the substances which are being produced by these microbes, which we are benefiting very much with that. And the kind of food we are eating food 3 times a day, 5 times a day, 6 times a day. And then there's not enough bacteria there to digest it, help us in our digestion. So this is causing our problems. So this is called dysbiosis. So our own genetics, even the bacteria in our gut are so much, their genetic material is so much that they alter our own genes. So that's called epigenetics. So our own genes also get modified in a good way to help us, because if we have lot more bacterial variation in our gut. Then what about our diet? As I said, now we are using more and more processed food and energy dense food. And the next thing is our stress. We are running and running and running behind something, a mirage. We are always worried about the end. We are not worried about the journey. So we have to enjoy our journey, not look at the, some end point and we are all the time running. So our entire journey is going waste and becoming more and more stressful and affecting our health. And early colonization also is getting affected by, now earlier people were delivering at home, so there was no new microbiome entering the system within the family. The grandmother or mother would assist them in deliveries. Now we deliver in hospitals and there is altered exposure. So I'm trying to just tell you what is, normally we don't think in these lines. So it is good to have that kind of background ideas when we are trying to take a decision in any situation. Having this knowledge will empower us. So what about the medical practice? Of course, vaccination use. See, medicine has done lot of good to us. In earlier days, people were dying of smallpox. The first time smallpox vaccine was done, it vaccinated. It was called in Turkey. They used to have what is called as smallpox parties. So they would call people for lunch, and one lady would come and with one pocket she will take out one dabba, and then with one blade ring like thing she would do that smallpox vaccination kind of thing on the elbow, forearm of everyone. So all of them would have mild smallpox and recover. Some of them may have, if their immune system is not good, they would get more, but they would not die. So that's how it started. People didn't accept initially, like how now also people didn't want to take vaccination. So like that, vaccination has evolved, and now we have so many vaccines and they are really helping the people by giving them a lot of immunity. What about antibiotic? Antibiotic also has helped save a lot of lives, but we have to use our discretion, use it, very discreetly. I remember my mother was a medical microbiologist. So I have not taken a single antibiotic till I delivered. Even then my mother said, you don't need the antibiotic, but because you delivered in a hospital, you may get hospital acquired infection. 3 days I was given an antibiotic. So being a microbiologist, we were exposed to all sorts of things. We never used to buy a fruit from outside, just wipe it and eat it. So that she would say, you will get immunity with this. If you got hurt, even 2 months, 3 months, she would not wash it and put ointment. She would say, you will get immunity. So these are the things which definitely help us. So dysbiosis happens when, this gut bacteria become pathogenic, then they change the intestinal permeability. That means they make the intestines more loose so this bacteria can enter in. When they're trying to enter, then the intestine realizes that something is happening, some enemy is coming. So they will start the inflammatory response. So this inflammatory response, supposing you are under stress for a number of years, you are running in your life. So this stress is going on, causing some problem with the bacteria, and it is opening up the intestinal, there is a mucosal layer, mucin, that gets thinned out, and through that the bacteria is trying to enter into the system and attack. See, whenever in a community, if the people are well looked after, they will be happy. If someone tries to needle someone, they will become aggressive. Similarly, this bacteria will take a chance and try to enter into the host system. Then the host will start attacking. So this mild attacks, if they are going on like skirmishes in our border periphery, then what happens? Long term, if it happens, it causes an autoimmune change. So they will develop autoimmune problems. Diseases can happen. So now we know, this is our lifestyle is like a sinking ship. With this lifestyle, our bodies and our health is becoming like a sinking ship. It is only thing, it is slowing down. We can slow down the sinking, but we have to take lot of steps to prevent the ship from reaching that stage. Especially so, I thought I'll start with our kids' gut. 5 ways to boost our kids' gut, because the mother is the one who is responsible. So you have to feed your microbes. That means the gut bacteria, you have to give good food which is high fiber diet. So that is called the prebiotic. So you must feed those microbes good prebiotic, lot of fiber in the diet. In the Western diet, you see Mediterranean diet, that's why we say is the best, because it has lot of salads and leafy vegetables, and so they have lot of fiber in their diet. Whereas in American diet, you hardly have any fiber. Then eat bacteria, by meaning eat bacteria is don't over sanitize. And then you grow your own vegetables or organic vegetables which are not, you are not using lot of chemicals and pesticides. Then without too much of washing and cleaning, you can eat them. Then avoid unnecessary antibiotics and expose yourself to nature's microbes. That means let the children play in the outside in the garden. Don't make them wash their hands with soap and water, sanitize them, sanitize their toys, sanitize the house. So all these things are a no-no, because if you do that, the children will have the immune system in the children also is very, very active. It is always trying to find new bacteria which are bad and try to develop antibodies and resistance against them. If you don't give them any bad bacteria to fight against, it is like an army which is there, which has no work, it has no one to fight with. Then what will happen? They will fight with each other. Similarly, these immune system will start fighting with the body itself. That's how they develop asthma, they develop ADHD, so many things. All these autoimmune problems occur because of that. So now we also know that the gut microbiome brain axis exists. That means whatever you eat, there is a saying, isn't it? The person's, the way to a husband, the man's heart is through his stomach. That has a bearing. That means if you eat good food, you feel good. If you eat something which is not agreeing with it, you will have a headache, or you will have nausea, you will feel restless, irritable. So gut orchestrates the inflammatory response. That means not the gut, it is the bacteria in the gut, that 10 trillion human cells, 40 to 100 trillion microbes, and the number of species I have mentioned. So daily taking fermented food. In India, that's why Indian diet is also very good, because we take lot of fermented food. In Korea, they take kimchi, which is again fermented food. And antibiotics and stress reduce these bacterial species in the gut. So that is about the gut and the bacteria. So now we come to the nutrient immunity infection triad. That means the micronutrient deficiency. We think, that we are eating a very good healthy diet, but we need lot of micronutrients, that like zinc, vitamin C, manganese, selenium, all these are micronutrients which are available in our different vegetables. So we need to eat a variety of food. And most micronutrients are available in colored vegetables and fruits. So that's why we say have a rainbow diet which contains multiple colors in your diet. On your plate, you should have brinjal, purple, green, lady's fingers, green leafy vegetables, orange tomato, red tomato, orange carrot, maroon beetroot. So all these kind of things, cabbage, broccoli. So what happens when you have micronutrient deficiency? It suppresses immunity. So innate immunity is what your body always has for any organism. Adaptive immunity is when you specifically respond to one virus or bacteria which is not new to your body and which is likely to harm your body. So if you don't have enough micronutrients, all this get suppressed and you are more prone to get infected. So because of that, there is a dysregulation of host response. If you have a lot of micronutrients, your immunity will be good. If you don't have it, then you are prone to infection. So it alters the metabolic pathways. There is more deficiency, further absorption also becomes less, and more of them get wasted from the gut. So you become deficient. Another sad story, what we are seeing now is our foods also are losing their nutritive value. So I'm not going to go into the detail of this, but we are having this GM, genetically modified foods. So the native foods which we had was packed with these micronutrients, whereas the foods which we get now, the fruits or vegetables which are genetically modified, seeds and other things, they don't contain that much of the nutritive value. So we have to go back and say, get out our old, to the villages where they have the native fruits and vegetables. They may be small, they may not look very attractive, but they are very healthy. So I think we have to do that revival. So micronutrients have significant effect, and they are present in the fruits and vegetables. So there is a decrease. So moving from traditional minimally processed food to highly processed, energy dense, micronutrient poor diet is one of the causes for our lack of immunity, getting infections very fast, getting all non-communicable illnesses like diabetes, hypertension, hypercholesterolemia, obesity, all these problems, and one adds on to the other. So this is our problem. And there are certain populations which are at high risk for this. So being the mother and caregiver, the woman of the house should know that the infants, children, adolescents, because they are growing, children because they are all in this phase, these three groups are developing lot of immunity. And of course, in pregnancy, there is demand, nutritive demand is higher. Lactation has more demand than during pregnancy. Elderly, because they don't absorb enough and their digestive system becomes weak, and they have their immunity is also falling short of this thing, and they are more prone for infections. You have to take more care. And people who have allergies and vegetarians, now we also see a lot of vegans. Then chronic disease patients, patients who have chronic autoimmune problems and other diseases, or cancer patients, they need more inputs, more micronutrients they have to cover. So what happens when you have micronutrients in the normal level? These are all subclinical. You cannot tell from looking at a person they have micronutrient deficiency. But if they are falling sick very often, then we suspect that there could be micronutrient deficiency. Nowadays, we have those tests where they test all the micronutrients. So when there is deficiency, you see severe clinical deficiency, marginal severe, and then it can also result in death. How does it affect these micronutrients? See, vitamin A, C, E, and zinc, they give the barrier to the skin and epithelial surfaces, not so that they don't get infected. Then in the immune system itself, all these vitamin A, D, folic acid, iron, copper, all these, they help in strengthening our cellular immunity and antibody production. See, now we are giving the vaccination and we are testing if the antibodies are sufficient or not. So if the person is micronutrient deficient also, in spite of taking the vaccination, he may not be able to produce the ideal antibody level. So they may still again get the infection. Or if the person is under a lot of stress, so they require more micronutrients and their intake is less. So then you get into problem. So now what do? We have to refresh. Now that we know, we have to again restart, reboot ourselves. So what do we need for the stress? That is one of the ubiquitous things we see these days. Every single person you ask, you say, I am having a lot of stress. My work is so much, or my family is stress, or someone is ill, or so many things. Stress is increasing day by day. How do you counter it? You need to have a good hormonal milieu. You should develop, produce a lot of happy hormones. See, our body, God has given everything to us. Our body is like a universe. We are having so many bacteria, so much of our own cells, so many systems. Each one is like one department working to keep our body healthy and safe. So but we also have, if these can also fight against our own body. So we have to safeguard it from such an eventuality. How do we do that? So have happy hormones, develop them: oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins. These are all feel-good hormones. Oxytocin is basically when you are bonding with your children, with your spouse, with the family members. Women are supposed to have more immunity than men because we have a good sisterhood bonding. So we tend to talk out our problems, voice our problems, whereas men don't do it that often. So they are the ones who fall sick more often. Dopamine, striving emotion. Nowadays, women also are striving to do so many things. You are all an example for it. So that will also release a lot of dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins. So I thought I will just elaborate a little bit on this because it will help you to plan your lives. Oxytocin is that love hormone, bonding, physical contact. The Jadu Ki Jappi of Munna Bhai releases oxytocin and emotions. So good emotions. So don't try to keep on, if someone is talking negatively, try to move away from that person or try to change that person's viewpoint. Dopamine, as I said, gut health. So eat good food with lot of fibers and sleep well, meditate, exercise, listening to music, taking less saturated fat, a high protein diet, taking high protein diet, exposing yourself to sunlight, taking vitamin supplements, even taking a massage will increase your dopamine production. Serotonin, if you are helping others, you challenge yourself to do something which you never did, you always wanted to do, you started doing it. You're doing aerobic exercises, yoga. You see people even at 65, 70, they have started to do cycling now. They're trying to do swimming. All these will increase your serotonin. Then endorphins. These are released by physical activity. Every day morning you go for a walk. You don't go for one day. You feel, very let down. So that is because your dose of endorphins did not come in the morning. They are like morphine to your body. You get addicted to it. Sexual activity and orgasm also increase your endorphin levels. Now coming to the sunlight. Sunlight is, you all know, it's the nature's energy source. And our what we don't realize is our body reacts to presence or absence of the light. So all our hormones, especially the reproductive hormones, are released in the night. There is a circadian rhythm. In the morning, they release in a different pulsatile pattern. In the night, they release differently. So you have to sleep have dinner early, go to bed early, and switch off the lights because you have some photosensitive cells on your forehead which tell the body that it is night. If you don't switch off the light, you're watching Netflix till 2 a.m. or 3 a.m., the body feels that it is still daytime. So it will not release, the circadian rhythm doesn't start. So you see a lot more patients who come with irregular cycles, delayed periods, or excessive bleeding or weight gain. Lack of sleep also makes your body gain weight. All of you must have watched the movie Avatar. In Avatar, you see all of them, when they go, they fight, they come back and then get into that box and sleep. It's like charging your cell phone. In your sleep, you are recharging your body. In sleep, your body produces a lot of growth hormone, which will repair your body. So next morning, the previous night, you are so tired, you have a good night's sleep, you get up in the morning, you feel so invigorated and energetic, ready to take on the world. So that is how important our sleep is. So how does it help? Melatonin is the hormone which gets, the chemical which gets released in the brain. All of you also know about melatonin. When you're doing international travel, you're advised to take melatonin tablets. It is one of the greatest antioxidants that the body produces. So it is a scavenger of the reactive oxygen species. That means the oxygen that we, when we take in and burn, it, see, another very interesting thing I like to tell. I don't know if I am going to take more time, Uma. It's okay. Is it okay? Uma? You want me to elaborate or you can complete it?
Doctor, you can elaborate it.
Yeah. So one important thing, I realized recently, there's one shop called My Rose. I don't know how many of you seen that rose. Because Pinky Reddy, she gave me one rose for my 60th birthday. When I looked at it, this thought came into my mind, so that thing with that glass dome on it, it's almost 4 years. That rose is a real rose. It remains the same. It has not changed in the last 4 years. Why has it remained like that? That is because we have put a dome on it and not allowed it to expose itself to oxygen. So for us, oxygen we need for giving us energy, but oxygen also makes us age. Understand? So whenever like you are putting a chula, you are lighting, you are using the oxygen, and the smoke, it is emanating the smoke, which is black and soot, which can cause the damage. So same thing, when we take in breath, our body using the oxygen, it will release this reactive oxygen species, ROS. So these ROS has to be scavenged, removed, cleaned by the melatonin and many other things like nitric oxide and all our body produces. So if you don't sleep, you don't get enough melatonin, you are going to age. Your body is not going to get repaired properly. So even PCOS women, polycystic ovaries, they will have high oxidative stress levels because they are not producing the good melatonin. Shifts, people who are in shift work, bright environment, and it also produces melatonin. It will increase LH secretion and cause PCOS. So sleep disturbances are bad. So difficulty in initiating and maintaining sleep, if you have, you must start your sleep hygiene measures and improve your lifestyle modifications. That means you have to exercise in the morning, not in the evening. If you exercise in the evening, your body becomes more alert, then you will find it difficult to fall asleep. Not only that, our body again is like with the sun, it rises, with the sunset, it sets. So our metabolic rate is very high in the morning and very low in the evening. So if you exercise in the morning, you will greatly benefit from it. If you exercise in the evening, your body is already slowing down. Even if you exercise for 1 hour, 2 hours, you won't get the benefit. Plus, that exercise releases all these good hormones which make your mind more alert. Then you will find it difficult to slow down again and fall asleep. So till 2 a.m., 3 a.m., you may not be able to fall asleep. So again, next day you will feel drowsy and all these problems. So a balanced lifestyle is what is very, very important. You have to have a proper diet, exercise, rest, and stress. Avoid stress. So rest is important because body heals. Stress you should avoid because it is going to cause imbalance in your gut, and then there is a chronic inflammation kind of thing in the body, and your brain starts producing negative chemicals. All these problems happen. And exercise, why it helps? We all know that we exercise, we know that we burn calories. But what is happening when you exercise? Your body is producing nitric oxide. So people who exercise look much, much younger. If you have seen, I think, Neetu Singh, how she was 40 years ago, now also you see her, she looks almost the same. Similarly, Rekha, Hema Malini, they're all regularly they're exercising. Whereas you remember olden days, film stars like Sadhana, Meena Kumari, how did they age? Because they never took care of their bodies. Whereas the present day actresses, they take good care of their diet, exercise, rest, and they try to avoid stress. So exercise, what it does is, whenever you exercise, your body, the heart beats faster and all the blood has to go to the muscles. When the muscles, the blood goes in, the main source of nitric oxide is the endothelium. Endothelium is the lining of the blood vessels. Okay, and this nitric oxide is released there and it will act on the muscle is outside the endothelium. So it will either contract the muscle or relax. So when you exercise, the body needs more blood. So it has to relax the blood vessel, the muscle. So to relax, it will produce nitric oxide. And the nitric oxide is a great vasodilator. You also note nitric oxide is what Viagra releases. So what happens when they take, the male person takes Viagra, they get an erection because it dilates all the vessels. It also dilates the penile vessels. So this nitric oxide is again a great antioxidant. So all these reactive oxygen species that are being formed in the body are being neutralized by this nitric oxide. So if you exercise, you will produce more nitric oxide. So the aging, so it's like that flower and the dome. So even though you are using the oxygen, immediately the nitric oxide is removing all the scavenging the reactive, that means reactive oxygen species. So it will keep you much more fresher and younger and youthful. Understand? What about obesity and gut bacteria? So this is another lot of studies have been done They have transplanted the bacteria of obese people in thin people, and they found these thin people became obese. And so and thin people bacteria, if you transplant, obese people also may lose weight faster. So there are a lot of studies there. So don't think that an obese person is there because they are eating too much and not exercising, not taking care. Some of them, in families it runs. They are all very obese. That means their gut contains bacteria which is making them obese, or they have a very low gut bacterial diversity. So these people, if they start eating high fiber diet, we think, it's the fiber, that's why they are losing weight. No, with the high fiber diet, the bacteria the bacterial species variation increases. So they will have more and more varieties of bacteria, and that will help them to lose weight. So gut bacteria also affects the appetite and may help produce many chemicals which will help the person. So this is one picture I wanted to show. See, look at these fat cells. These are all fat cells. A person who is very obese will have lot of inflammatory response. See, this IL-6, this is what is being produced in COVID. Okay. So all this increase is produced. So patients who are very obese, if they get COVID-19, they are more at risk of developing a severe disease, and also they are likely to die. We have seen recently, we lost one of our very famous singer from South India, who was otherwise apparently very healthy, except that he was obese. So this is how, in spite of doing everything, we could not save. So once the person loses weight, see, the fat cells have shrunk in size. The number of fat cells remain the same, but they start becoming smaller. Then the inflammation comes down, insulin resistance comes down. So interleukin 6 also comes down. So people in COVID times, you should not gain weight. You should be exercising, eating right, sleeping well. All these things, if you follow, even if you get COVID, you will not go into the inflammatory pathway. So coming to rebirth, all of us with this knowledge, what do we do? One life, many lives. So anyone who has touched our life has helped us to discover ourselves, and we have to move forward. And every step forward, we must try to reach new heights. Here, like this phoenix, which is rising from the flames. Every time we have adversity, like this COVID-19 is a very adverse situation. But we should not let it cow down us. We should not bow down to it. We must try to rise above it and soar to greater heights. So, female reproductive tract, a little bit about it. It is a very unique system. See, you must remember the vagina, which is full of bacteria. And after that, you have the cervix and the uterus on top. And through that, only the sperms are also entering, and a baby is getting produced, baby is growing. And that baby is containing the husband's spermatozoa, which is immunologically different from the mother's, but still the mother is accepting. Supposing a woman or man undergoes a renal transplant or a liver transplant, they need immunosuppressants throughout their life because it is something from outside. Whereas a pregnant woman is carrying the baby which contains the husband's sperm, chromosomal material, which is foreign to her. But 9 months, she is accepting the baby, allowing the baby to grow, allowing the baby to thrive. She is giving everything the baby needs. How is it possible? That is because the body is designed the woman's body is designed in such a way that she will produce some blocking antibodies, which will block the male chromosomal material. Only her material she will accept, and she will identify and allow this to grow. So these are all many things which it cannot be explained so in a short while, but just to contemplate how these things are possible. And so many viruses in the reproductive age group, when the sexually active period, so many bacteria, viruses are all entering, but they are not causing any infection. That means there's a lot of lymphatic coverage in the vagina and cervix, which will protect. So a lot of macrophages, T cells, B cells are always active there. That means that is the war zone where everywhere all the fighting is going on, and always the body wins. Unless the woman's immunity is low, she's under stress. I find lot of women coming to me during the examination period. When the children's exams are going, mothers come to me with white discharge, leukorrhea, all these problems. They are more worried about their children's exams. So their immunity comes down. Then a bacteria which is normally living also will become pathogenic. So these are all things over the years we have found. So I definitely know there is a relationship between our immunity and the way our reproductive tract is, functions, how it is protected. So there is immune system is needed, a balanced immune system is needed for the good reproductive health. So this is the vaginal wall, which is the 4-5 cell layers. So this is where most of the bacteria can attack. So it is very thick wall. So it can fight. It is not so easy to break that wall. Whereas once you go into the uterus, it is a single cell layer like this. The columnar cell, it produces a lot of glycogen for the to nourish the embryo. This is the ovary. The sperm goes up, and also this glycogen nourishes the sperm when it is traveling up. Here fertilization occurs. They come here, get implanted. So for the implantation to occur, it should not be 4 cell layered. It has to be easy for the pregnancy to get in and implant itself. So it is beautifully a human or any organism for that matter, any living being or any plant or tree or monocellular, God has created it with so much of love and so much of thoughtfulness. We cannot create something, one single thing like that in all our life in any field. So it is then only you understand. As being a doctor, we believe a lot in God, not about which God, but we believe there is a power which has created such wonderful different kinds of living beings and all trying to live harmoniously in this planet. A little bit about menopause, because Uma said a lot of women are above 40, so they may be entering or already entered menopause. So menopause is again a special area where nutrition you have to concentrate on that. Lot of metabolic changes happen. Metabolic needs are different. Suddenly a woman who was very thin, she finds she's gaining weight around menopause because her metabolic rate slows down. Then there is redistribution of fat because the estrogen is lost. There will be more of, we call it insulin resistance occurs. That is, body is trying to get more estrogen for that woman because her ovaries are no longer producing estrogen. After menopause, it doesn't produce. So this insulin resistance, what it does, it will make the ovary produce more male hormone, testosterone. And that male hormone is converted in the fat to a milder form of estrogen. Normally, ovary produces estradiol, whereas in menopause, after menopause, it produces in the fat estrone, which is 20 times less potent, but it helps the woman to maintain her cardiac health, her skin tone, her bone strength, all these things, elasticity a little bit. So that's the time if a woman has got borderline diabetes, she can become overtly diabetic. Or she can have the metabolic syndrome where her blood pressure will go up, her cholesterol will go up if she has become sedentary, not exercising, all her muscle loss is there. So muscle is where the glucose is utilized. In the fat, it doesn't utilize. Fat only stores and becomes bigger and bigger fat cell. Whereas muscle will use the glucose and burn it and make the bulk becomes bigger. So it burns more. So woman will not gain weight. And there are certain social factors at this time which will also make the woman not eat well or eat the wrong kind of food. She will start eating a lot of sweets and not exercise, not sleep. So all this can happen suddenly. So healthy menopausal diet, I think I'll skip this because most of you know about it. Lot of fruits and vegetables and try to reduce the caloric intake. Lot of flaxseed. You can take flaxseed, cinnamon, fenugreek, somph, salad curd. They all contain lot of phytoestrogens. That means naturally occurring estrogens, which can help the body. Then those who are non-vegetarians can have lot of fish because it will have unsaturated fatty acids. Then nuts like almonds, walnuts, dates, figs, apricot. Almonds are the greatest source of arginine. Arginine is again a substance. If you take arginine, it will release produce lot of nitric oxide. So, but if you take that because you think arginine is there, you eat 30-40 almonds a day, your waist size will increase. So only 3 or 4 almonds, and you can have walnuts also has arginine. You can have sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, all this. Then blended oil, MUFA, omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids as combination, and have lot of curd, because curd again contains lot of bacteria. So lactobacillus, which will increase your gut bacteria. So you modify your diet around menopause. Calcium intake, you take more milk and milk products or cheese or sunflower and all these things which contains sunflower seeds contain lot of calcium. Then intake of protein, high protein diet, salt reduce, caffeine less than 3 cups, and vitamin D. As I told you again, insulin resistance increases around menopause. So all these problems, once you're fat in the middle, you have a apple-shaped body, not the pear-shaped body after menopause. So you have more women. See, before menopause, men have twice the risk of cardiovascular disease, whereas after menopause, men and women both have equal risks for coronary artery disease. Then because of the apple-shaped distribution, fatty liver changes. There will be fat deposited. So liver will start functioning less and less. Diabetes, hypothyroid, all these problems, sleep apnea, cancers, they can have. So prevention and management of insulin resistance, again, lifestyle modification. If you are hypertensive, take the medication. And if lipid profile is high, then take statins and control the diabetes. So finally, you have to see, I can't go back to my mother's womb, but I can always turn to Mother Earth. So we have to nourish our earth, because I have nowhere else to live. And I have used up so much of her resources. It's my turn to nurture her. So basically, connect to nature, avoid pollution. This should be the mantra now all of us have to follow. Otherwise, our children will have no place to live. So for good health and immunity also, it helps. You need to do all these things and make changes to achieve these goals. So lifestyle modification, diet, exercise, avoid stress. So recommended daily carbohydrate intake. So nowadays we are hearing a lot about the keto diet, this diet, but definitely at least 30% of your energy should come from carbohydrate, because this carbohydrate will give you the gut bacteria enough food, and the bacteria will thrive and they produce. Actually, lot of dopamine is produced by the gut bacteria. And if there is one nerve from the gut to the brain, that's called the vagus nerve. So this vagus nerve, 90% of the vagus nerve wiring is towards the brain. That means from the gut, all these chemicals are going towards the brain and influencing your mood. So if you eat good food, you will feel better. If you are on a constant diet, have you ever seen anyone on a constant diet being happy and this thing? They are always irritable unless they eat a very balanced diet. If they are short on any substance, especially carbohydrate, you become irritable and short-tempered. Everyone in the house is, the moment you are walking in, they are all running away. It's like that. So you know all about this. Try to eat low glycemic index foods so that you can have more bulk, which will have more fiber, and your sugar levels won't shoot up. So your insulin levels won't shoot up. Exercise also. Every week you must do at least 150 minutes, at least 30 minutes for 5 days in a week. Or if you're doing vigorous intensity exercise, 75 minutes is also good enough. Weight training, especially in postmenopausal women, using resistant bands, weight bearing aerobics, even for youngster, anyone, you can build up your muscles. For adolescent, if they do weight training, they build their bone health. So bone health is another thing. By the time you are 22, your bone reaches its maximum calcium bone density. After that, it maintains for some time in the reproductive age group, and before menopause itself, few years before, it will start losing the calcium and start becoming weaker and weaker. So you need to do a lot of exercise. So finally, I'm coming to the COVID. So we feel that, it's a challenge for all of us. It's an adversity situation, but everything has a seed of opportunity and growth. Because of COVID, we have started thinking about all these things which we took for granted. We never bothered to analyze what we are eating, how we are sleeping, what we are doing, how we are reacting with people around us. Are we helping people around us? All this. So you all know about this hand washing or everything. You know how it affects. I'm rushing it through this. So it can be asymptomatic. Most patients, it is about 30% it is asymptomatic. In others, it is mild. So almost up to 85 to 90% it is asymptomatic to mild. Moderate is to severe are the 10 to 15% patients. Now this wave, we are having more of moderate and severe, and mostly with pneumonia and oxygen requirement. Only 3% of them, 3 to 5% are going into severe COVID, and out of that, 1 to 2% are becoming critical. So balance between physiologic states. So again, what all we heard earlier is important for COVID. So we need to have a symbiosis, homeostasis. Then only our body will recover. Otherwise, everything, there is permeability in the lung, in the gut, in everywhere. Dysbiosis, the bacteria will cause the inflammatory pathway, and then if a person is having chronic illness, they are also suffering higher severe COVID illness, and the recovery becomes difficult. This is a word about lactoferrin, because lactoferrin, now lot of papers are coming. Why I have put it about lactoferrin? Because it is a very powerful immune response that the body is producing. Lactoferrin we have in the lungs, we have in the feto-maternal interface, where the baby and the uterus, where they are joined together. There is a sinuses there where the blood exchange is happening. That place, it contains lot of lactoferrin. So that means wherever the body needs to fight infection, there is more of lactoferrin. In vagina, you can see cervicovaginal secretions. In the milk, see, transitional milk, colostrum has got highest lactoferrin. So when the baby is born, the first few days we say immunity comes because of the high levels of lactoferrin in the colostrum. In transitional milk, it is 3 milligrams. Mature milk, it is 2. So if you see in the salivary glands, lacrimal glands, through the eye also COVID can go in, through the lungs. So all these areas you will have high lactoferrin. So where do we get lactoferrin from? So you take lot of milk and milk products, and iron. You should not be anemic, because ferrin, contains, part of it is iron. So your body produces it if you have all the micronutrients in your body. Now, lastly, coming to COVID infection in pregnancy. So now we know, COVID, if the pregnant woman gets COVID, there is a risk, absolute risk for severe disease is quite low. That means if 100 women pregnant women get COVID, maybe 3 or 4 may get severe disease, but 97% may go off with mild, because as I told, they produce lot of lactoferrin, and the body is also in a immune suppressed state. I told you the male husband's chromosome should not be accepted by the mother. So mother will not launch any immune attack. So for COVID-19 also, it will not launch that inflammatory attack most often. So they are protected. But if the mother is already having some chronic illness, or she has some other infection, some problem, then she may land up with a severe disease. So, and this is also more common in third trimester, late pregnancy. So if it happens, then that woman is at a very high risk for ICU admission, mechanical ventilation, and other things. So now FIGO, that is the International Society of Gynecology, they have given their position on vaccination, because no clinical trials have been conducted. That means some women not given, some given. That kind of double-blind placebo-controlled trials have not been done. Data is limited. So sufficient evidence is lacking to recommend routine use. Though animal data is reassuring, and in America, almost 94,000 women have been vaccinated without any problem. So if you ask me, the benefits outweigh the risks. So I would say maybe it's better to give, because with so many vaccines we've been giving over the years, and we give flu vaccine, we give diphtheria, pertussis, tetanus vaccine in pregnancy. So we can give COVID also. It's like getting a mild COVID infection. So finally, I feel we should empower the woman, and she must take the choice, because we don't have any guidelines. So we must, supposing like now in Bangalore, Delhi, Bombay, there are a lot of infections happening there. Even in Telangana, the infections may go up. In such a scenario, it's better to take the vaccine than getting the disease, infection. And potential efficacy of the vaccine, how efficacious is it? And no company will say, okay, you can take in pregnancy, because they have not done the studies. They will not say you must take. But you weigh the pros and cons. The risk and potential severity of maternal disease, possible effect on fetus, newborn. With so many patients, last few months, most of my patients, quite a few of my patients they recovered, delivered, nothing went wrong with the mother or the baby. So when do we give? If we want to take, better to take in the second and third trimesters. And there will be some side effects like fever. That is actually the body is reacting to the virus, which is a good sign. So reassure that existing COVID-19 vaccines are not live viruses, not live vaccines. They are mRNA vaccines, have been tried in the US. Ours, we have also the killed vaccine, which is the Covaxin. So risk-based approach, if you say, only those who have high risk of exposure, like a doctor or a nurse who is going out and exposing herself, those only need to be vaccinated, or those who have diabetes in pregnancy, or very obese, elderly age group, only those need to be given. Then maybe we are not, putting the others at a disadvantage. So if you give, I think you should give for everyone. Second and third trimesters. And only thing is, when you give COVID vaccine, it should be given alone, not combine it with another thing, because you don't know how they are going to react with each other. And at least 14 days of interval before you give the other vaccine. So finally, I think we have come to the end of it. The bad, what we are seeing with the COVID is, we are needing the social distancing, economic pressures, bombardment from the media. I think that is something which we should avoid totally. Day-to-day issues, these online classes, worrying about family members, definitely it affects our mental well-being. So we need to contemplate, not travel unnecessarily, don't wasteful consumerism. So back to basics, and try to have a self-sustained lifestyle. And these are the ugly things which I find. We are indifferent to regulations, we are endangering others, we have poor public health system, poor healthcare spending, uncontrolled urban growth, pockets of dense population, degradation of environment, and discrimination. So I think, just to recapitulate all these things, I put this. So I think we need the strength to accept the things that we cannot change, and the courage to change the things that we can, and wisdom to know the difference, which you can change, which you cannot. So now I think I'll take the questions. I think almost an hour. I didn't expect to talk for so long, but.
Shashi, that is wonderful. Such a lovely Mother's Day gift from you. I can't go back to mother's womb. Let me go back to Mother's Day. It's fantastic, even to listen to that. Your presentation is such an eye-opener. Basically, we have to make our lives simpler, right? Enjoying small pleasures in life and trying to keep stress at bay. We should use the science and technology in a smart and minimal way, not too much of interference, right? So it's wonderful gift from you to all the mothers on this, Mother's Day, and people are waiting to ask questions. A few questions we will take.
Oh, yes.
If you are not too tired, okay?
No, not at all.
Thank you. So.
Yeah. Now I would like to invite our members to come forward with their questions. Our first member is Nanda Rao.
Namaste, Dr. Garu. Could you tell us what are the extra safety precautions that a pregnant mother has to take and a newborn should be given? Because avoiding hospital visits does not arise. They have to go to hospital for regular checkups, etc. And how safe would a multi-speciality hospital be for delivery compared to a standalone maternity hospital because of these pandemic times?
Okay. It's not the question of multi-hospital specialty or a standalone. It is how much care the hospital takes. And if there are no COVID cases, see, anywhere, any attendant also may be COVID positive, the patient's attendant. So basically, you must wear an N95 mask if you're coming to the hospital. And then what we are doing is we are distancing the patient from say 6 feet distance. Wherever it is a single hospital or multi-specialty, all our hospitals nowadays are air conditioned. So it is a closed atmosphere. So don't spend long time in a closed room. So you go finish your consultation, and if you are sitting in the big hall where a lot of people are there, 6 feet distance, the other person also wearing an N95 mask. If you sit for half an hour also, the chance of getting, unless you're standing next to each other and one person is not wearing properly, you will not get COVID so easily. You may get exposed to little virus, which is, I feel, useful. Like how I said, when we were young, we got infected. We were never put all those ointments, all those things. Body would get the immunity. So this is a natural way of acquiring immunity. Little bit of virus goes in, your body can handle it. Okay. And it is good. I have seen patients who have never ventured out of the house. Suddenly they go out for vaccination and they come back and are COVID positive. That means for 1 year, their body has not had any exposure to any bacteria or virus. So their entire immune system went for sleeping. So the moment you get exposed, it is not prepared to fight. So going for a checkup once in a, we also don't call them often for checkup. If they are once in a month checkup, we are saying come after 6 weeks. Every 2 weeks checkup, we are asking them to come every 3 weeks. Every week, final last month, it is every week, we tell them come every 10 days. And other time we are doing video consultation. Whenever they want any, if they are COVID positive, quite often patients have turned COVID positive, they call us up. So we follow them every day. They tell us their temperatures and their oxygen saturations. As I said, 90% of them recover. In fact, last week I have done 3 cases, COVID positive patients I have operated. First was a primee with a twin pregnancy, and her fever was not coming down after 1 week also. So I did a C-section for her. She was COVID positive. Next day, another primee COVID positive came in labor and she had a disproportion. Her head was floating head. So I did section. Third patient again, she was COVID positive and she started leaking. So again, she didn't progress. We did a section. I went and did myself. So I see, even after vaccination, you can get it. Even after you get COVID, you get it. But see, as long as you are strong, half the problem with COVID is, as I told you, all this immunity, the brain, the gut, everything are interlinked. If you are strong, you are healthy, and you are mentally strong, nothing happens. Patients who are falling more sick are those who are scared. The moment they know they are COVID, they are worried. I had COVID. I did not go out. I just stayed at home and came out before the vaccination. A lot of you also might have got COVID, isn't it? But first wave, it was not this bad. This time the virus has become more, it has become more virulent, more stronger. And the second thing is, older people got vaccinated. So they're to some extent protected. The virus knows no point going. The virus cannot survive on its own. It needs us. It has to get into our body to multiply itself and spread. So it will try to find the best soil where it can multiply. So youngsters, it is catching hold of youngsters. And these youngsters are generally of good health, so that symptoms are low. And even if they have a little symptom, they are trying to deny. Say, I don't have that. They're going out. So, and that stressful life, they're continuing. So what we are saying, if you have COVID, if you have a symptom, isolate yourself, rest, drink lot of water and sleep as much as you can. If you are not sleeping, you are going out with mild COVID, you have denied you have COVID, you are going out. On day 5, day 6, your body is going into the inflammatories. Then suddenly they are deteriorating. So even those who are on mild and isolated, day 5 or 6, we do one blood tests. And if those blood tests are going up, then we can give them medication which will help them. So at the right time, giving the dose of the drug will help.
Thank you, Dr. Karul.
Now we have our next question from our member, Suma Reddy.
Yeah, Namaskaram, Shashikar. That was so very informative, Andy. My question is regarding the menopausal women. I mean, there's been a growing concern that people in their late 30s and early 40s are succumbing to the COVID. So how true is this? What's your take on this? And are women basically in the menopausal stage more prone to attack? And is there any special care that we need to take in this?
I don't understand. You said after COVID, women are becoming menopausal, is it?
No. I mean to say that people in their 40s, the pre-menopausal stage, are seem to be succumbing to COVID far more than people in the other age categories.
That is because less than 45 were not vaccinated.
Oh.
See, anyone who is vaccinated, had 2 doses of vaccine, will go through a mild or rarely moderate disease. They never go to the severe disease unless they have lot of comorbidities. Whereas this time, less than 45, many of them did not get vaccinated.
I see.
Okay, so that's why, and the virus is more virulent.
Yes. And but we being in the menopausal stage, the pre-menopausal stage, are we more vulnerable to this kind of an attack, or?
No, I don't. It's not the menopause. Nothing to do with the menopause. It's all to do about our balanced lifestyle. If we are balanced, we are exercising, sleeping well. I don't know how people can sleep with this kind of media bombardment day in and day out, WhatsApp thing. So I think we must do this electronic detox. I have not watched news for the last 1 year. I only read the newspaper. So every hour they keep on showing the same pictures. So definitely even a normal person will become depressed. The moment you get depressed, immediately I told you there is a gut brain link. The moment you're depressed, those chemicals go to the rest of the body and then they destroy your entire, all the systems are affected. Okay, and then your sleep is affected, your repair process is affected. Then because you don't sleep, next day you are tired, your digestion is affected. So your micronutrient loss is there. So many things, all are interconnected. It's not one thing that is going to, so balance in all these aspects. And how much children, they're all sitting at home, no physical activity. They're sitting for 4 or 5 hours in front of that, their online classes. They don't know what they are listening. You don't know whether they are listening or playing games. So many things are happening. So you are stressed also in the process. All the time trying to check on them. And so make sure they get some kind of exercise, play with them, some board games or something, make life more interesting. Or all of you, if you have a place like gardening is the best thing. When you garden, you not only you are exposing yourself to nature, most people who do gardening are happy because I think when they put their hands in the soil, they get lot of bacteria. And some bacteria goes into their gut also. So it is good. They feel good because that bacteria is multiplying and producing dopamine and other things, making them feel happy.
Yes.
So hooked up in the room all the time. So take them out for a drive to some open place. Let them play some game and come back. These are things I think we should plan for the kids.
Yes. So we don't need any extra supplement.
No.
Such to safeguard.
Extra supplement, yes, for all. We are actually, from the time COVID started, we were saying, because now we are at home, no sunlight, vitamin D, we are definitely recommending. Once a week, if you can get your test done and you are low on vitamin D, weekly for 6 to 8 weeks, then once a month. But if your vitamin D is normal, say 30 to 40, you take once a month, every month you take. And there is one simple thing I tell my patients: if you are feeling lot of body pains, or in the night from bed you want to, from one side to the other, you are unable to turn easily, some pains, that is an indirect evidence that you have vitamin deficiency, D deficiency. Take 160K, next within 2-3 days you will feel the difference. B12. Those who are vegetarians. See, previously, then everyone will ask me, how did vegetarians get B12 if they were olden days? They were getting water from the lake. In a village, there is a lake. They get water from the lake. The lake contains B12 producing bacteria. So they bring that water and then strain it through a cloth and drink that water. So they would get B12. Now what water are we drinking? We are drinking zero bacteria water. We're all having that water purifier, which is zero water, zero bacteria. So
Yes.
we don't get any B12 from the water. And fish, some of the fish in the water, they have this B12 is called cyanocobalamin. It has got that fluorescent blue, that algae, those bacteria. That's why it's called cyanocobalamin. So many things we have changed in the last 50 to 100 years unknowingly. Imagine in India, we were all eating with our hands. So with our hands when we eat, and then we feed the child and we feed. So we transfer some bacteria to them. Now we think it is not right to eat with hands. Then we used to lick our fingers. As kids even now they lick their fingers. But as we grow older, we think it is not fashionable to do those things. But they are all, we are actually feeding bacteria to our system.
Yes. Yes, Annie. Thanks a lot, Annie, for that. Thank you.
Now we have our next question from Nishita Manne.
Dear Dr. Kola, my question is regarding PMS. So when in the cycle will it start, and how severe can it get, and what can be done to reduce its impact, and does it reduce as the age advances? So can you throw some light into it?
What did you say? Last question. Does it reduce?
As the age advances, because when our menstruation stops or something, I don't know.
So PMS also is kind of, they say, when there is loss of, it's a kind of dysbiosis. Not all women have PMS. People who are more stressed out, type A personalities, or some amount of hormonal disturbance around 30, 35, that time, they start gaining weight, or they're more stressed, they don't sleep well, their diet is not balanced. So they retain more water before the menstruation. So what we tell these people is to take a lot of barley water. Barley is again has a lot of soluble fiber, which will improve the bacteria, and also it will reduce the water content of the body. And then take low salt diet, low fat diet in the 10-15 days before periods. Drink lot of water and exercise. Sleep on time. And if that also doesn't work, and we give this omega-3 fatty acids. So unsaturated fatty acids. What premenstrual syndrome is, lot of prostaglandins are produced in the uterus. And these prostaglandins, they circulate, and then they can cause lot of breast tenderness and other things. So using these omega-3 fatty acids and micronutrients, we give these tablets which contain a lot of micronutrients, they help.
Thank you, doctor.
So now we have our next question from Deepika Malani.
Hello, doctor. Thank you so much for the insightful talk that we had today. Something which we never knew of, we never think of. My question to you is, what do blood clots or coagulation at the end of a menstrual cycle signify for ladies aged around 40 years?
Blood, whenever there is blood clot, that means you are bleeding a lot, more than normal. Normal blood flow, menstrual blood flow, there is not much of clots because in the menstrual, the endometrium contains lot of coagulation factors also. That means the endometrium, which is building up in the throughout the month, end of the month it is shedding. When it sheds, at the basal level, they are the vessels. So these vessels should not continuously bleed. They bleed for 3-4 days and you stop. So in that 3 days, there is a clot that forms. So you have a lot of clotting factors in the endometrium. And you also have clot breaking factors. So they are called plasminogen activators. So the clot, our body contains both of everything. So like when I say symbiosis, dysbiosis also. So if a bad thing comes, you have to fight. Something good comes, you have to accept. So like that, clot forms, it's good to stop the bleeding. But if there's not, the clot extends beyond and it goes up, you can have a deep vein thrombosis, or you can have leg thrombosis, pelvic vein thrombosis. So to break that, you also have a clot breaking mechanism. So, but that's why normally there is a clot that forms and little breakup, and that broken clot is the one which comes out in the menstrual cycle. But if you are bleeding more, that blood comes out with the clotting factors, clots, and comes out as a clot. So whenever the woman says you are passing clots, that means you are bleeding more than normal. Next, we tell them you check your hemoglobin and also check how much you are bleeding in the pot, not on the pad. You may be bleeding more when you are into the pot. So you need to check your hemoglobin and see if there is any problem and exclude it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Our next question is from Ritusha.
Doctor, my question to you is, if a lady is COVID positive, suffering from COVID, what are the implications on the fetus or the maternal health or the reproductive organs?
Nothing. So the same COVID fetus, in the non-pregnant. Fetus also, no, we have not found cases of fetus being affected as of now with COVID. As I told you, this lactoferrin and other things within the feto-maternal surface, there's a lot of lactoferrin which is immunoprotective. So it will not allow any of the viruses or anything to cross. There are a few viruses which cross, like cytomegalovirus and other things, but COVID they have not found.
So do they need to take...
1 or 2 cases, there are case reports, but we don't know whether it is because of a transplacental this thing, or there was a rupture somewhere through that it has entered into the system.
So do they need to take some extra care post-COVID, ma'am, if they've just delivered or if they're still pregnant?
See, if they are delivering and they're still COVID positive, the temperature is high. After delivery, that's when we are doing the HRCT. If their temperature is continuing or saturations are low or they're coughing a lot, then we would like to do. So when HRCT, we don't want to do pre-delivery. But even if the patient has high fever, breathless, even that is acceptable. If you weigh the risks versus benefit, we get more benefit, because after cesarean, to take her out and get a HRCT also difficult. And the physician knows at what stage her lungs are, how much damage they are. So immediately after delivery, we can start the treatment. If we do the HRCT and find lungs are fine, then we need not rush and give remdesivir and all those things. So definitely that's the only thing. It's like a non-pregnant patient with COVID, how we follow pregnant lady also. Only thing here we feel, if something deterioration happens, it may be very rapid. In fact, last week we had a patient who came on a ventilator and a section was done. She recovered. So like that, there are another patient came drowsy at 35 weeks. Of the moment in pregnancy, only problem is the uterus is occupying the entire abdomen. So it raises the diaphragm. When it raises the diaphragm, the lung capacity is smaller. So the earlier, quicker you deliver, the diaphragm comes down, lung expands, recovery happens. Otherwise, already damaged with the COVID lung and it is raised. So there's not enough of oxygenation happening. So recovery gets slow.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, doctor.
Thank you so much, doctor, for your wonderful insights. It's time to take a step back and think about what we have been doing to take care of ourselves, especially considering the current scenario. Here's hoping that Dr. Shashikala's advice helps each and every one of us to come out of this pandemic healthy and well. We would like to announce virtual felicitation of our esteemed guest speaker, Dr. Shashikala Kola, by Chairperson Uma Chigurupati. I would now request Vice Chairperson Ritusha to deliver her vote of thanks.
Thank you, Radhika. Thank you, doctor. Your body is your temple, but only if you trust it is one. Women's health is her capital. I take this opportunity today to thank our speaker, Dr. Shashikala Kola, for such an informative session, ma'am. Ma'am, your insights on microbiomes, micronutrient diet, and happy hormones has really inspired me. And I think so everybody has that take, and everybody loved the sentence of, I can't go back to my mother's womb. Let me go back to Mother Earth. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, our sponsors, Platinum sponsor, Greenco, Gold sponsor, Granules India, RBC, our branding partner. Thank you, our IT team, for the smooth management. Thank you, our floor members and our past chairs, for your continued support and your participation today. Thank you, team 2021-22, for all the efforts put in today. Indeed, of all the rights of a woman, the greatest is to be a mother. Happy Mother's Day to all. And here I end this saying to all, stay safe, stay happy. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much.
On behalf of Chairperson Uma Chigurupati and her committee, I thank you all for being here. It's your support that keeps us going. All good things have to come to an end, and so does this event too. Live every day as a blessing, nourish your body, mind, and soul. Wishing you all a safe and healthy weekend. Thank you and namaste.